Hello, children. I'm Victoria Carlton. You can call me Vicky. This is a Bible story from the book of Genesis. And it's a story that is really interesting because it's got a lot of different things in it. One thing it's got in it is dreams. So do you have dreams when you fall asleep? Do you sometimes dream of strange things? I have lots of very, very strange dreams. Sometimes I remember them, sometimes I don't. It's also a dream about a coat. Now, I've got my favourite coat here. I want to show you because I love this coat so much. This coat it's my raincoat, and it's been raining a lot, so I'm wearing my raincoat a lot. And you can see it's very, very brightly coloured, and I love wearing this. I really love wearing this, and I would hate it if I lost it. So it's about a coat too. And it's about a father called Jacob, who really spoiled his son. And that made all the boys' brothers really, really jealous. So that's not a really good thing for parents to do, is it? To really favour one child. But that's what happened in this story. So the story, I've called it Joseph the Dreamer, okay? So it starts off with Jacob and his family. They lived in the land of Canaan. So they all lived there together, with all their sheep and servants and everything. They were pretty well off. And Joseph was, at this stage, he was the youngest son. He was 17 years of age, and he helped his brothers to care for the sheep and for the goats as well. But, Jacob loved Joseph so much. He loved him so much that he had a special coat made for him. And it looked a bit like this, a really, really beautiful coat. So he had this special coat made for him. And it made the brothers feel really jealous because they knew that he was really the favourite. So they would go out and they would do all the hard work. But of course, Joseph didn't really have to help much. And to make matters even worse, Joseph was showing off a little bit. He used to love to show off his coat and make his brothers quite jealous. And then Joseph had these dreams. He had two dreams that really made his brothers really angry. So the first one was that he dreamt that he was with his brothers and that they were all out in the field and they were cutting wheat. They were cutting wheat and they were putting them into stacks. And he dreamt that his stack that he cut, that there it is, of wheat, he dreamt that all his brothers' stacks were bowing down to his stack. Now, that made his brothers feel really, really angry. How dare he have a dream that his brothers should be bowing down for him? And then, to make matters even worse, he had another dream. He actually dreamt that in this dream that the sun and the moon and all these stars all bowed down to him in the dream. And even his father, even Jacob, said to him, "Hey, Joseph, you've gone a bit far here. All right, that's not really a good dream to have, and that's not really going to make your brothers very happy." But anyway, so things were going along not very happily. So one day, Jacob said to Joseph, "How about you go out and just check on your brothers? Just check on your brothers, make sure they're okay. They're herding the sheep and the goats. Make sure they're okay. Make sure the sheep and the goats are okay as well." So, Joseph had to set out. It was quite a long way and he had to walk a long, long distance. And while he got there, the land was sort of quite flat, a bit like what you can see behind me here today. His brothers saw him coming from a long way off and they said, "Let's kill him. We've had enough of him. Let's just kill him and we'll put his body down a well." But it sort of didn't happen because luckily, one of his brothers decided that that would not be a very good idea. So Reuben said, no, let's not kill him. We don't need to spill his blood. Let's just take his striped coat off, because he always wore this coat because he loved it so much, and let's just put him in a well. So what Reuben really planned to do actually was, when his brothers went away after they'd done that, he was going to go back and he was going to let Joseph go so he could go back to his father. So the brothers sort of agreed, and that's what they do. So when Joseph finally got there, they grabbed him, they ripped his coat off him and they threw him down into a well. Luckily, there wasn't any water down there, so he didn't drown. So he went into a well, and there was just maybe just a little bit of water, but not much. But he was pretty sad because he was stuck down in this well. So he didn't know what was going to happen to him then. And then the brothers sat down and they decided that they would have their dinner, because they were quite hungry. They'd been working hard all day. So they sat down to eat. And then along came all of these camels, and there were what we call them Ishmaelites. These people came along on their camels and they were traveling to Egypt, and they were carrying spices and balm and myrrh, and they were going to take it to Egypt to sell those things. And another one of the brothers, Judah, said, well, why don't we sell Joseph? Why don't we sell him to the Ishmaelites, all right? And we'll make some money that way, but we won't kill him. So that's what they did. So they stopped the Ishmaelites and said, would you like to buy a slave? And the Ishmaelites said, oh, yeah, how much? And they told how many bits of silver they wanted. And they sold their brother to be a slave. Would you like to be a slave where you had to do everything that everybody tells you to do? It'd be pretty horrible, wouldn't it? It would be pretty horrible. And so when they did that, Reuben had gone off for a bit to check on some goats and sheep in another area. And when he came back, he was so upset because he looked down the hole, because he was going to rescue Joseph, remember? And he wasn't there. He said, what have you done with him? And then they told him what they'd done. And they took the beautiful coat that Joseph had been wearing, and they dipped it in blood. They killed a goat and they dipped the coat in goat's blood so that they could say to Jacob, their father, oh, Joseph was killed. He was killed by a wild animal. Isn't that terrible? So that's what they did. They actually told Jacob, they told their father that Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. And Jacob was so sad. Jacob was so sad. He was crying. He was ripping his clothes. He was in so much grief and he was crying. Nobody could even help him or stop him from crying. He was so upset because he loved Joseph so much. So Joseph was taken away by the Ishmaelites and he was taken to Egypt. And when he got to Egypt, what they did was they sold him. They sold him and they made some money. They sold him to Potiphar. Now, Potiphar was the officer to the king of Egypt. So he was the chief officer to the king of Egypt. So Joseph was sold to a very important person. And it's not very long after that the story gets even more interesting. But you will have to wait for the next story to find out about that. Or you might be able to go into your Bibles with your mum and dad and read a little bit more about this amazing story. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Bye.
For more of Victoria Carlton's tips, go to YouTube and search Victoria Carlton Programs. Victoria's products are available on Teachers Pay Teachers. They cover literacy, emotional intelligence, and Sunday school lessons. Victoria's website address, blog, and email address are on the screen in front of you. Victoria Carlton reserves the right of copyright on all her products.